Hi, and welcome to this session on fan engagement. Uh, a reminder to please ask questions at any time via the Q&A box on the right of your screen. We'll answer as many as we can throughout the discussion. You can also share thoughts and tweets on social media using the hashtag FTFootball. I'm Murad Ahmed. I'm the technology news editor for the Financial Times and one of the co-founders of this event. So we've got a lot to discuss with our panel, but I'm going to go straight to DJ on this because when it comes to fan engagement, what the golden goose is for a lot of football clubs and a lot of people in this world is Gen Z or the younger audiences, and how clubs and stakeholders try and attract them. Obviously, you have years of experience of doing this at EA Sports. Talk us through what you're looking for, and how you go about targeting fans.
Yeah, it's a great question. We have 35 years of experience at EA Sports building fan engagement platforms through the lens of interactive entertainment. I manage the FC brand here at EA, and sort of just like your favorite science fiction novel, the biggest advantage you can build is sort of building a time machine. And what I mean by that is, how do you build content and experiences that engage a massive population of fans over time through increasing levels of interactive content that we build at EA Sports. So whether that is a conventional video game platform, a lot of which we manage and manipulate today through various different consoles and PC and mobile platforms. And the intent really is to get the biggest number of fan population towards the greatest level of experience we can through three lenses, really. One is authenticity, so the licenses that we bring into the platform through leagues and teams and talent. One is innovation. Every single year, the experiences should evolve and they should engage fans in meaningful new ways. And then the purpose that we have and sort of the way that we want to show up in the world should engage players and engage fans in a way that when they're in the experience, we can offer to them new and engaging experiences that we add on to that time machine over time. So we have accelerated our ambition in the world of play. We've got 150 million fans now engaging with some level of FC experience in any given 12-month
150 million?
150 million, yes.
Right.
It's about 50 million on a console platform, so the game that people would traditionally associate EA Sports with. And then we have a phenomenally successful mobile product and then a free-to-play product in Asia. They tend to address different motivations of different fans in different places. And then over time, our ambition is to bolt on beyond play experiences. So how do we blur the lines between the real game, the real sport that exists on pitches all over the world, and the virtual one that happens in people's living rooms or on their phones? And that blurring of the lines over time is something that I think EA Sports has begun to never potentially perfect, but our job is to get that line to be ever and ever closer so that people stop seeing it and they can transition between the real world of football and into the interactive one. So we've just undertaken an enormous rebrand moment from where we were for the last 35 years with a naming rights partner in FIFA to a new platform that we've built under EA Sports FC. And we've seen that authenticity and innovation and purpose have been the guiding principles that have led us through a relatively successful transition. We feel really pleased with where we've gotten to. So there are techniques that are available all the time to engage more and more fans. You know, you can't over-index in a specific geo or a specific league or team. And we have to fairly sort of operationalize our product across the broad spectrum of football. But building that time machine and ensuring that we can absorb a fan's best time, and especially a Gen Z, Gen Alpha fan's best time, is something that EA Sports is particularly adept at.
Yeah, and just one follow-up. Obviously, there's lots of news around changing the name from FIFA to EA Sports FC. It seems like you made the calculation that fans didn't really care about the name. They cared about the game and they cared about engaging with the players and the clubs. That seems to be one of the key takeaways from the experience that you've had over the last couple of years.
EA is it's a very deliberate, very intentional organization. So there was 24 months of planning before we even decided to make that shift. And then there's a long period of research and investment into understanding our fans and what their expectations are of any change that we then try and execute and deliver within the product experience. You obviously then, even within the rebrand context, start with that terrifying blank piece of paper, and you have to position kind of the world in which you want to inhabit in the future. I think we've done a relatively good job of ensuring that the visual identity and the experience of the brand lives in the minds of players. And we're starting to see some of the fruits of that in our research and our analysis. But ultimately, it was still the guiding principles of authenticity, innovation, purpose in every decision we made all the way through that rebrand transition. And it's held us in really good stead. And we're seeing the results in that. We just saw our Q3 results were up 7% year over year. That's obviously lapping a really important year where we had 2 World Cups in the prior product. And I think all of our modeling suggested a little bit of deficiency in our results in this coming year, but we're really pleased to have seen that acceleration, and that delta hasn't really caused us as many challenges at all.
Okay, coming to David, I'm just going to introduce everyone properly as we go along. David Ingham is the head of media and entertainment and sport at Cognizant. David, a lot of your work is working out how to monetize the fan, particularly young audiences. Well, what have you learned? What are the key things that you try and advise people when they're trying to think about this?
I know that the panel is talking about Gen Z specifically, but that is just one segment
Sure.
of your fan base. So I think it's understanding, why are you going after Gen Z? What's the objective there? And how does that fit within the overall strategy? Because I think there's been a lot of research, and I'd be interested what panel members say. The Gen Z is not spending a lot of money with you directly. They're not going to matches as much. They're not maybe the direct subscribers to TNT or Sky Sports. So why are you going after them? Is it to start having an affinity for the club for future spending? So understand why you're going after it, because I think with marketers in general, there is a tendency to go after Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, whatever the current sort of young demographic is, but understand and don't ignore the people that are rocking up, that are paying for season tickets.
Absolutely.
Because it can take a lot of your efforts and budget. So I think that's one thing of having it part of an overall segmentation strategy.
And how do you get that balance right? Because I think the one thing about going after young audiences, particularly for sport, is even though you're making a decision based on passion early on in your life, you end up making an economic decision once you're a supporter. You're a supporter of that club for decades onwards. So how do you? It is important to think about that early segment as well.
It totally is. I don't want to,
of course,
I don't want to minimize that, but I think it's understanding when they make that switch from a demographic standpoint.
Right.
And is it when they're married, when they settle down, or when they get to a certain age and have more disposable income? I think you have to do the research for your sport, your club, your league, whatever that is, and understand and build it into your strategy. So I think it's knowing your fan. I'm a big advocate for knowing why the fan comes to the sport, because I think people, they think that what they're doing is the perfect thing. So they're coming because they love the club or they love this and that. And really it could be because they love one player. They love something. They love the logo. They love the geography about something. So certain fans are fleeting, right?
Right.
But do you know why they came? And can you lean into that from a marketing, communication, offers, whatever standpoint? So it comes in that whole strategy for me, and really understanding why they've come and what you're trying to get out of them and instill in them.
Sure. Okay, coming to the clubs, Claire Cronin, the Chief Marketing Officer of Chelsea FC. So what does Chelsea do to understand its audience? Obviously, you've got a full Stamford Bridge, roaring crowds, loads of people around the world following Chelsea, years of winning trophies that have attracted fans to you. But how do you get to understand them? And we are at the FT here, so we're allowed to talk about making money as a result. So how do you also go about monetizing those people as well?
Yeah. Well, to build on David's point, we really look at the fan engagement at a very macro level, and then we look to segment down on the specific audiences. So at a totally macro level, we look at fan engagement, say there's kind of 3 ways to do it. Number 1, we were talking about this before the break, win on the pitch. That absolutely helped to drive the fan engagement.
Does help.
Number 2, have Taylor Swift date one of your players. Number 3, actually use data and insights to understand what your customers, what your fans want. And the first 2 are outside of my control. And so the third one is really the lever that I'm looking at with my wider team. And we can see through the data and insight that for Gen Z in particular, they are the biggest demographic that use our app. And the number one thing they want to do on the app is look at the highlights of the game,
Right.
to look at live streaming of the products when we go overseas on tour. And so last year, we kind of looked at that app experience and we tapped into some different mechanisms to get that fan data. So we're very lucky that we've got a very heavy-hitting fan advisory board. We were the first club in the Premier League to set that up. And then we also have 800 supporters clubs worldwide. So we've got two great mechanisms to tap into to find out what do they want us to do? How do they want us to evolve the app? What kind of features they want us to add? And the number one thing coming back was that they wanted more data and more graphical overlays on the actual live stream. And we were kind of puzzled by this because it's not something that has been used very much in kind of football thus far. But when we got under the skin of the data, and to David's point, started to segment it down based on countries and demographics, what we understood was that the biggest clamoring for that was in the US, where they're very used to already having data overlays because of things like the NFL, with things like F1, which has massively increased in popularity. And so we said, okay, well, if that's what they want, then who do we partner with to provide that level of experience? Because it's not something the club had any capability in. And so we actually worked with Infinite Athlete, and they had developed a product that enabled us to deliver the kind of first ever AI-driven bespoke broadcast. And so we saw that just from deploying that one innovation with Infinite Athlete, we had a 47% uplift in people viewing the overseas tour. Didn't change anything else, didn't put any paid media behind it. And so we could see that we were obviously giving the fans what they wanted. And now that we've had the product live with them for so long, we've applied it to also just the domestic matches. We're working with them now, and they're obviously now our front of shirt partner. So we've developed the partnership much more. And we're working with them and with our fan groups, and now with Yonder, which is an additional tool that we've deployed so that we can better understand the global audiences.
Sort of what's Yonder?
So Yonder it's just a fan research mechanism. So it's a survey that gets deployed across your global fan base, and you can ask specific questions of them wherever the club wants to focus their interests. So we're using Yonder to ask very specific questions about some of the areas that we think we want to innovate in, based on what some of the supporters clubs are telling us, what we're hearing through the fan advisory board, and using that to validate how much of a difference would it make to fans. Is it something they'd be willing to pay for example, or is it something that should be part of a membership proposition that's free for all? And so as a result of some of the work that we're doing with Infinite Athlete, the features that they're asking for are things that we would never think to ever innovate ourselves. So some of the things that have been coming up are, we would love to be able to have a personalized broadcast. So when we watch the highlights back, if, for example, Millie Bright's your favorite player, we'd love to be able to watch the game highlights through the perspective of following her around on the pitch. Now, we would never have come up with that at head office, but it's something that fans will say to us. And so we're really looking to try and keep on innovating and delivering the experiences they want through the app, because we see that that's the best mechanism for us. You know, it's their phones are in their pocket, they're constantly on them. And so us being able to tailor our content and to really pinpoint the features that they want, then enable us to deliver real value to the fans. And ultimately, that's what it's about. It's about fan-first engagement versus what I see a lot in other sports and other industries, is creating technology and then trying to find a way to serve it up to clients or to fans who weren't actually expecting it and didn't really want it or value it.
Yeah, being responsive, not only just coming up with a product, but being responsive to what they want. I have to end up asking a question about the fan engagement panel as well, particularly in a season like this for Chelsea, season transition, and so on. Is it? It can't all be just data overlays in the apps. There must be. Do they get a chance to talk to you directly about things like what they want to see on the pitch, transfers, and all the rest of it?
There is a lot more than data overlays. It's kind of what they want the stadium to look like. So obviously, we've been in discussion for a very long time about building a new stadium. So there's a lot of information about what they'd like the stadium to look like, what they want in terms of the bars and the food and the catering that we provide at Stamford Bridge, what they want the next season's team kit to look like, what they want the crest applied to in terms of other merchandise they'd like to be able to buy, what they want the Junior Blues program to look like, which is our kind of starter proposition for kids. Like, there is so much insight. I mean, that's a great thing about working in sports, and it's one of the reasons I love it, is that, you know, I started my career in DJ actually, and I both spent time at Barclays. You know, when you try and ask customers of a bank what they would like, it's really hard to get them to engage with you on a panel. and you have to pay them to take part in surveys. When you work in sport, it's a lean forward environment. Fans can't wait to tell you what they want from you, and they will give up their time incredibly generously to share their insights with anyone. And so we're in a very privileged position that we can gather all of that insight for free. And so we really see it as our duty to then take that insight and apply it as best we can. Now, a lot of the insight coming through on social media is not something I can control. It's like, we want to buy this player, we think, this person should be transferred, etc. But it's great to have such high levels of engagement. And I think as a marketeer, that's your dream.
Yeah, having sat at Stamford Bridge many times, I can confirm that Chelsea fans are very keen to share their views at any one time. Andre Bernardo, the Chief Strategy and Operations Officer at Sporting Club de Portugal. Some of the ways that you, as a club, have engaged with fans have been quite innovative and interested as well. You've done collaborations with ex-players and things like that. Do you want to talk a bit about the sorts of ways that you've tried to reach out to fans, and also helping the bottom line of the club at the same time?
Yeah, our approach, and what we've talked and picking up here on what was discussed. I think the fundamentals remain the same when you want to talk to fans. So it's basically about creating value. Now, how do you create value and how do you interact definitely has changed a lot, and it's definitely a game changer. Also, and mainly because Gen Z, for example, they actually sell the message. Okay, now, so they communicate your message, and that can be good or not. So they have a lot more power. It's a lot easier for us to spread out the message, but it's also a lot more difficult to stand out. And we have some insights. For example, our third jersey was a collaboration between Sporting, Cristiano Ronaldo, and Nike. A little bit on the Jordan version of itself. And if you look at, for example, this Jordan in itself, the insight that people do follow players in sometimes more than actually brands,
right,
was there already in Jordan's time. Now it's pretty obvious with social media that that's the case. We usually showcase our third jersey making off. We show a slide with the top 10 most populated countries, and you have China, India. Number 3, we leave a question mark for people to guess. Then number 4, the US with around 300 something million, and then you go on to number 10 with a chart. And what you see is that when you try to, well, no one guesses because the number 3, it's the US actually. But then we pop up the column where he has Cristiano Ronaldo with 500 million. Well, at the time it was 500 million. Now it's more than 600 million. And you can see that there's one individual brand that has like a lot more power. Well, it's number 1 actually in the world. But it's a good analogy to how powerful someone, in this case Cristiano Ronaldo, is. So we picked up at that insight, and then we told the story because we had another insight because we celebrated 20 years from our stadium this year. And when we had the opening game 20 years ago, Cristiano Ronaldo played. It was an opening game against Man United. And it was when Man United decided to buy Cristiano, and that's when he kicked off his international career. So we told the whole story to celebrate with that jersey the 20 years, picking up on Cristiano Ronaldo. So we inspired ourselves in the jersey that was worn in that game 20 years ago, and instead of the swoosh, we placed the CR7, and we sold, like, it was our most successful product, and it has been 7 times more sales than the best jersey ever. And that's a good insight in some way to, I think, the value creation comes from this. There's definitely a lot more power from these generations to follow players, and that's one way we explored the engagement. But I think if you compare, there's not that many difference. How you trigger the behavior, how you interact, it's definitely different. And that's one way that we explore that relationship with much success.
Yeah, and it's very much accepting what your strengths are, accepting your history, and knowing that fans of all generations are still going to be attracted to that Ronaldo connection going forward. It's really fascinating. There are lots of questions coming through, and I do want to get to them. I'm going to ask one more to the panel before we get going. A lot of my day job now is thinking about artificial intelligence and the rise of it. And I'm not going to ask questions about when we're getting AI robot players anytime soon. I'm sure they'll be very good. But David, what are the ways that AI is being leveraged right now across, the football industry, the sports industry? What are the useful ways of doing it, and what is maybe potentially a bit hyped right now without really benefiting organizations here?
There is so much hype, but I think from what I see from a client and work perspective, there's two use cases that everybody should be working on, and it's fan engagement. It's like automated highlights. You have to really understand the fan, but you can do really interesting sort of one-on-one or individualized, hyper-personalized, clips or messages and things like that. So that's one. You need really detailed data on the fan, first-party data that you're curating and can use for it, and then link that up with your video library and things like that. But that's one use case. And then another is the performance data. I mean, there's huge amounts of data out there, and you really need good data scientists to dig in to say, well, what are the actual metrics that matter and that align with the way you guide your club to those statistics. But I think those are two very simple use cases that you should start with personally and sort of get the basics down for those. I think, the last few years we've been distracted, I think, by metaverse and Web3 and crypto and fan tokens and all this sort of stuff that is now gone. The fog is cleared. But my advice for clubs and leagues and rights holders in general is AI can benefit you, but you need to focus on your data and sort of some simple use cases to prove value first.
Right. We were talking about, last year the conversation was completely different. We were talking about, well, are you going to do a crypto deal? What's your Web3?
I still look back at that.
But you're much more positive on AI actually having a big influence on what's...
Yes. I think everybody would be surprised how many brands specifically are using AI to interact with you in the digital channels. I think it's becoming the norm. I think sport is a little bit behind on that, primarily because of the data. I don't think sport has invested in first-party data as much as brands have. So I think there's an opportunity there, but it's not a test bed anymore. It is real. There's value to be had there.
DJ, I don't think the AI revolution will have caught you by surprise in any way. I'd be fascinated to know what you're doing in this world, again, particularly to go back to the panel, like in ways that the fans will see and appreciate and enjoy.
Yeah, I really like what David was saying. You've got to be careful with really sort of valuable tools like AI. If you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail, and there is the enticement to kind of use AI as a panacea to solve all of your challenges. It won't do that, and obviously it's equally important what you put into an AI model or a large language model as to what comes out on the back end. We've had AI in our titles for 20 years, but it's GoFi. It's good old-fashioned AI in terms of player positioning, or how a team operates within the context of a match environment, or even how an engine would manipulate certain animations in game to create a certain outcome. What we're seeing now, though, is when used properly, and obviously through the enormous volumes of telemetric data we have in the game, we have 30 years of data within how players engage with an interactive experience. If you can use that, manipulate that, and solve for that, and synthesize it really strongly, you can run so many extra cycles to accelerate progress. So using data as an accelerant to an AI algorithm, and then using that as an accelerant to creating ever better experiences, is definitely something where I think the video game industry and the interactive experiences industry is a little ahead of the curve. Everybody else will catch up. But as long as we don't believe that it's a catch-all to solving a problem, and that all of a sudden, we don't need to put in the effort to create the right inputs to AI, it's not going to solve very much for you. Yeah. Although it might create interactive highlights.
And slightly tangential, but it's not a worry for you. Look, EA spent, billions building this game, really, and the engines that make it work. But now you've seen OpenAI release this video feature, which looks absolutely stunning, and it seems like other people who haven't spent as much might be able to catch up, at least visually, with what you're doing. You just don't think it's replicable to do the other things that have made the game so successful.
Yeah, we saw the OpenAI demonstration. It's incredible. And I actually think we'll solve for so many shortcomings in certain spaces and level the playing field in certain areas. The challenge at the moment, though, is we've gone from language to speech to animation. Interactive animation is a little step further. The ability to manipulate animation in real time using multiple inputs. As I said, there's 150 million people all over the world playing our games in some way. Tuning that and ensuring that a player in Japan and a player in London can communicate at exactly the same time. There's no lag, that the ping rates are right. You want to try and overlay an AI generative experience in that. The technology just doesn't exist yet. You're talking about quantum computing to solve for those challenges. And yes, it will come, but EA is not going anywhere.
Yeah.
There's still certain challenges that a competitor would have to overcome in terms of licensed content, in terms of access to player data and records, and 30 years of experience of understanding a fan. And really, that's what it actually is, speaking fluently in the language of football and understanding the culture of what makes somebody love this sport and love their particular team or athlete. As Bernardo was saying, that's different from just being able to catch up visually using an aid like an AI generated algorithm.
Okay, right. I'm because there are so many questions coming in, I feel like I should go to the audience. Claire, a question specifically for you.
It's not about Taylor Swift, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, I'm very keen to talk about Taylor Swift, but that is not the question.
Oh, good.
Somebody asked, in the segmentation exercise conducted by Chelsea, mentioned before, what were the main differences detected in engagement and preferences of female fans?
Great question. So we're only just being able to build some really good data around female fans because we have so many more male fans than we do female fans, and that's surprising, right? Because we have the best team in the Women's Super League. So we are desperately trying to grow and elevate the women's game. And actually, shout out to DJ, who's been incredibly generous in sharing some of the research and some of their findings. When they were doing their brand refresh, they really were, they did an amazing amount of work to understand female fans, gamers, etc. And so he's been really generous in helping to provide some of that understanding and insight to us as we seek to build out the game and seek to enrich the whole end-to-end fan journey. So some of the things that were coming out from the female football fans, a lot more of the focus was around the actual grounds themselves. So we obviously play a lot of our games over at Kings Meadow. This year, we've actually moved and done 5 of the games over at Stamford Bridge. And the feedback that they're giving us, and we can see it based on their user behaviour, is very different. So with the men's football matches, we see that they arrive at the game hours and hours in advance. A big part of the match day experience is being on the kind of on stadium site experience and kind of enjoying the experience in the bars and enjoying our hospitality. What we can see from the female audience is that they're very late coming. So they'll literally come to the game 10 minutes before kickoff. And we even have them arriving during the game and buying tickets and still adding to the stadium numbers, which is very different. You would never see that in men's football. And some of the feedback that we're getting from them is around what we can do to enhance the overall experience for their family. So we see there's a much bigger family demographic coming to those games, and they're looking for more interactive and on-site kind of fun experiences. So we're trying to innovate around the match day experience. And then some of the data things that they're wanting to see related to both the men's game and the women's game is more around the players themselves. So small, funny details like they don't just want to see how fast say Cole Palmer will shoot the goal. They want to see what's the exact speed of a Sam Kerr backflip. What has been the fastest one you've done. So they really want to engage in all aspects of the game, not just the on-pitch performance. And so those are some of the things that we're sort of uncovering, some of those kind of nuggets.
And what is the exact speed?
Do you know what? I do not know that stat. It's bloody fast though.
Yeah. Andre, what about the kind of the fan experience in the stadium and the kind of different generations? Questioner asks, do you think that Gen Z are attending matches in lower frequency due to lack of interest, or is it more likely due to having less money and access to than older fans? What's been your experience at
Well,
Sporting?
probably all or none, but no, I think obviously Gen Z has a lot of more opportunities to spend their time in a lot of different things, not only on social media but other type of events, sports, whatever, and so they have more opportunity to spend their time. So I think our biggest competitor is actually time, and they have a smaller span of time, as we know, but we are competing in time in all platforms, not only live events, but even in social media. We compete with whatever, Netflix, people playing games. So we want those time frames for people to catch their attention. We don't have that much data to compare. How was my younger generation compared to this one? So it's hard to say that do they go less or no.
Right.
We do see that there's an obviously connection between it's the older generation that brings the younger generation, and there's a huge emotional connection, and there's again also a demographic aspect that we have a hard time to understand, which is, I think someone mentioned, is they will change from Gen Z to something. They will have kids. They will have more money. Does this behavior is related to circumstantial factors, and they will eventually move to football? So we cannot tell exactly with the data that we have that there's actually a big change on that. We can see that there are different behaviors that we need to trigger those behaviors differently. For example, we have some insights that women's target actually are more engaged to football, masculine football, into women football. And we also developed, for example, a lifestyle collection that resonated a lot with the women's audience, and it was amplified by women, because women, although our target is majorly masculine, when it comes to amplifying your brand, women amplify it a lot more, because majority the influencers are women, especially in Portugal, etc. So you have a lot of aspects, but we don't see in the game day match experience that much of a difference that we can say there's a difference in behavior between this generation and 20 years ago. Also, because 20 years ago we didn't have the data to compare, so it's not that obvious. And there's also something interesting. We launched a new collection recently called Golden Echo, inspired on Ayrton Senna's and the car that he drove, which was a Lotus. And he won his first race in Formula One in Lisbon, in Portugal, in Estoril. And it's funny that when we were actually developing the product, some of my team didn't know the automobile, and they didn't actually know. But it's funny how immediately even the younger generations resonate, because they quickly find out, they know the story, they go and they amplify it, because they actually their fathers will tell them about the yes, I remember that, etc. So it has like a domino effect, even when the younger generation doesn't know it. And again, I think someone said they might not be so engaged in some aspects as the older generations to the technical or football aspects, but there's a whole package that they like, especially if it's meaningful. Someone's mentioned that. But it's hard to tell exactly differences because we don't have the data to compare.
And under what you're saying, the power of fandom is that sense of community, and there's nothing more powerful than one generation taking the next generation to games and building that fandom. One of the other questions that I'd like to come through is about Web3. So, but I think they mean crypto. Are clubs afraid to enter the Web3 space because they lack the in-house personnel that understand it? I've got to come to Claire about this.
I mean, I'd say that there is a real problem with talent acquisition in football, in as much as, and it's the same, I used to work for McLaren Racing as well. We tend to, in sports, I think, recruit the same people that move around the same sports clubs. And as a consequence, then you don't get some of that new thinking and some of that innovation. And so one of the things that we're desperately trying to do at Chelsea is to onboard people with different experience from different industries. There is a massive amount of talent within football, and absolutely we want to attract that. But we believe that it's really the blend of both, of having that kind of alchemy and that mixture of real neurodiversity, real difference in experiences. That's where we'll get to the best quality of talent on the bench in every regard. And so I definitely would agree that part of the reason why football and sports at large have kind of struggled to grasp things like the metaverse, and why they frankly then just pile into things like digital collectibles and NFTs is because they hear it's a hot new thing. They're like, okay, well, if it's a hot new thing, we must get and do it. But ultimately, they haven't started with the fundamentals as to, does anybody want it? And if so, how should we supply it? What's the price point they're willing to pay? And it's kind of very reassuring to hear that we've started at exactly the place where David would have advised us to, which is start with what do your fans want and serve up the brilliant basics. The fans didn't ask us for an AI-driven bespoke broadcast. They wouldn't even know what that language meant. But they asked us for, we see this stuff happening in F1 and NFL. Why can't it happen in football? And actually, the benefit for us as a marketing organization and as a club is that when you do things like automated highlights, you take out a lot of the manual work and therefore you take out the cost. So then you can take the money that you've saved doing that and actually deploy it in something that fans do value. And that might not be in the web space at all. That might be, to your point, might be actually about improving the quality of the catering at the stadium. So we very much take an agnostic approach as to, we don't go in with a solution in mind and then try and find a problem we're trying to fix. We start with the fans first always. We ask the question, what do they want? And then we look to see what's the best way to put that together so we can build the very best customer value proposition. And things like customer value proposition isn't a phrase you hear much in sport. But, you know, DJ and I have worked in kind of other industries, and that is what you would hear in kind of classic FMCG companies and other industries. And it's that mindset of being very focused on first-party data acquisition, as David said, being laser focused on your fans. And I love the work that they've done within bringing together the power of kind of F1 in football, because we can all collectively see that actually where our fans want us to be is operating at the intersection of like fashion, music, football, sport. It's the blend of those things where the fans really love those kind of experiences, and that's why you're able to generate like the best ever commercial returns.
Yeah, David, I assume that would be similar to your advice, but how would you kind of I assume you also might be a bit wary about the kind of the riskier end of this. I mean, there have been digital collectibles about, but there have been associations with crypto companies that have been problematic.
I literally don't even want to talk about crypto. I think it's been played out. I thought this was the year where we wouldn't hear about Chelsea coin and all these things. So I think it is getting back to fundamentals. I think one area that I'd be interested in on monetization for Gen Z specifically is to your sponsors. You know, maybe they're not spending money with you directly, but if you're acquiring that fan data and you can tell a better story to sponsors that value just having access to that audience and how you can activate against it, that's a huge monetization opportunity for clubs and leagues. So again, I'd like talking more about these traditional or maybe old-fashioned monetization opportunities as opposed to
the ones that have worked.
Yeah. But I would say there's still massive opportunity in crypto. That like the obligation is for us within the club and as marketers to understand the value it can bring and do something. I mean, to pick up on DJ's words, something authentic, something that's innovative, something that's purpose-driven. And if we take that lens into anything, into any sector, then you can make it work for fans. But it's again starting with the fan.
Yeah, DJ, I'm going to give you the final word. I mean, you must have thought about this, and but definitely on the collectibles side of things, the game probably does lend itself to it, but equally there are risks involved here.
Yeah, I think, you know, digital collectibles and digital payment we sort of invented in the video game space, and there is this sense of, you know, when NFT was hype and when the metaverse was the future, EA Sports surely should be there. But I said at the start, and I'll say it again, we're a very deliberate, very intentional organization. We like to create genuine fan value. And when you look at something like NFT and crypto, to use Claire's point, until we fully appreciate and understand the value proposition that you're offering back to a fan, I don't think you can in all good conscience try and sell it to them. The other thing that I think is super important, certainly in the crypto space, is until somebody like the Federal Reserve or the Bank of England underwrites the value proposition and the ecosystem, the economy is rigid, it's really, really tough to sell something based on that, which today might be worth $100 and tomorrow nothing. So that speculation increases risk. It then detracts from fans' trust in that proposition. And as a result, the person selling it is revealing themselves to not necessarily understand the fan and not necessarily understand value. So we looked at it. I think we moved very significantly away from it because we already offer immense digital value through the experiences that we build in EA Sports. I was going to reference, because there were some brilliant data points that were being shared earlier, and I did share some content with Claire. I will share some more on sporting as well, because we have a partnership as of this year, but we had last year's data. There is some sort of unqualified fear, I think, around Gen Z and the fact that they're not spending money in the way that they once were. I do think some of that comes from the fact that we now have lots of data. If you're looking for a negative answer, there's so much data now, you'll go find it. We just ran a significant survey. We have 30 years of telemetric data, but we ran a survey in 8 countries with 6,000 fans. And a fan who's playing an FC product is 20% more likely to engage in football. For a Gen Z and Gen A fan, that means they're 36% more likely to play recreational football, so reinvesting in kind of the heart of the sport and what makes it so essential in people's lives. 18% more likely to buy football tickets, and 21% more likely to buy a subscription. So it is truly understanding the fan. Where does their fandom come from? How can you accelerate that through experience? And yeah, maybe the experience, the initial inception experience, looks different today than it did 20 years ago. My first experience was 6 years old, going to an Everton match when we won 4-0. Hasn't happened since. And it made me fall in love with the game. That's different now. That might be a kid picking up one of our products for the first time. It might be in Chelsea's fan app. It might be buying a digital or physical collectible with Cristiano Ronaldo and Nike. Essentially, it doesn't really matter. As long as a fan falls in love with a sport, we can add the experiences over time that create lifetime value. The survey also told us lifetime value of an average football fan, some infinitely more, some infinitely less, is around $3,000. It jumps 50% if you're a fan as a result of playing FC. And if you selected your club, which is why our relationships are so important, through FC, it jumps 103%. The lifetime value of deeply engaging with a digital product like ours allows you to grow into a love of the sport long term, and obviously add back to the world of football and its broader economy. So we feel like we've never been more positive about the future of football. We're incredibly optimistic about the value that we're offering, not only to our fans, but also the football industry at large. And maybe we'll share the Chelsea data afterwards. Sam Kerr was an essential part of that FIFA 23 product. Having her on the cover of the game was an immense moment for us as a brand. And adding, sorry, one more data point. You said it's the FT, so I'm allowed. We offered Chelsea 13.4 billion impressions of content last year. That was $113 million of media value out of the game, up 118% year over year. 43% of that was for men's, 57% for women's, and Sam Kerr accounted for 57% of that value. So offering 3, Nike, Whalefin, Trivago, the partners that Chelsea and Claire had in that year, immense media value through the lens of an incredible talent, put on the front cover of an incredibly engaged in product, is the alchemy that I think we're all looking to drive. None of that came through AI.
Absolutely. And on that very positive note, and I like any panel that's dominated by talk of Sam Kerr and her magic abilities. I'd like to thank the panel for all your great insights today. Thank you so much for watching back behind your screen. A reminder that this session will be available on demand for a minimum of 90 days on the event website. In a few minutes, my colleague Josh Noble, the FT Sports editor, will be moderating a special panel on the big issues affecting football fans right now. He'll be joined by Dominic Rosso, Vice Chair of the Chelsea Supporters Trust, and Andy Green, Finance Director of the Manchester United Supporters Trust, as well as Deborah Dilworth, the head of women's football for England's Football Supporters Association. We will be back shortly.